morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we're going to be looking at a new Aerodactyl card. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We're getting a new Aerodactyl, and this could be pretty gosh darn good. It does quite a lot of damage for not quite a lot of energy. Now, starting off, we've got 130 HP here, which is quite a bit. It means something like a Zoroark won't get a one-hit KO. We like 130 HP. 130 HP is much better than 120 in the game at the moment. Retreat cost of 1 is very low. It means you do have access to escape board if you do so feel. The resistance to fighting is great with Buzzwole running around. And the weakness to lightning, I'm going to be honest with you, is not that great. Because the problem is that we got Electro Power now. And we've got Thunder Mountain, both of which are phenomenal cards. So that's going to make Lightning decks better. Good news is, over in Japan at the moment, the Zapdos, which is crushing, does not hit for weakness. Bad news is, Jolteon is being played in a bunch of those decks as well, and Jolteon very much does hit for weakness. And being a colourless Pokemon, you don't have any great advantages. Sorry about that. Now, the first attack here is fine. 1 colourless energy. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused. I'm not a huge fan of this attack. Now, I like the fact that it's for a colourless energy. Colourless energy is good. I do not like the fact that it's just confusion. If you look at something like Xurkitree, for 1 lightning energy, 20 damage plus confusion. Now, to be fair, this is for a colourless rather than a lightning, but even so, this is extremely disappointing. Because you're not actually doing any damage whatsoever, which it kind of sucks. Now, we did have a look at Parasect the other day, and Parasect has got a lovely little ability whereby your opponent's Pokemon that are confused take 2 damage counters between turns. And then, of course, this can keep building up. So if you've got 2 Parasect, that's 4 between turns, 3 Parasect, 6 between turns. And if they choose not to get out of the active, then they're taking, 2 after your turn, 2 after their turn, 2 after your turn. So that's essentially 6 damage counters per Parasect if they don't get out the active. Confusion means that if you want to attack, you got to flip a coin. If tails, your attack fails and you take 3 damage counters. But kind of like poison, this doesn't go away until you get out the active. There's no going away after a turn like paralysis. There's no coin flip like burn or sleep. This stays around until you get out of the active. So with something like Parasect, this could add up, but I really do just think it's a worse version of Xurkitree. And then you start building in, well, hang on a second, everyone's playing Guzma at the moment, and a bunch of people are playing Tate and Liza at the moment, and there's a whole bunch of people playing stuff like Escape Rope and Switch at the moment, and that's before we get to the aforementioned escape board, and actually, this is not the hardest thing in the world to get around. I'm not saying it's easy to get around by any stretch, but I am saying that people have got a way around confusion. And if they can't get around confusion, this is great. We've mentioned this in a couple videos lately, that sooner or later these resources run out, and if you're confused and you flip tails, that can completely swing a game. But this is a stage 1 that evolves from unidentified fossil, more on that in a moment. And it's just confusion for a colourless energy. I'm not loving it. But the second attack, I do like quite a bit more here. Now, our translations do come from the lovely David Hochmann over at limitlesstcg.com/translations, my favourite place for translations, as you all know. And what it does, for 3 colourless energy, 90 damage, if you have no Pokemon EX or GX on your bench, this attack does 90 more damage. And make no mistake about it, ladies and gentlemen, a flat 180 is great. Just being able to do a flat 180 damage is really, really good, especially on a non-GX single prize Pokemon. Now, in terms of the 180 here, that's just a straight KO on something like Blacephalon, for instance, which is probably the best Pokemon in the format at the moment. And then, of course, time you had a Choice Band, you're up to 210, and you've got Zoroark, and Shrine of Punishment is great here, because as we said, this is only really useful in a deck where you're not playing EXs and GXs. So actually, Shrine of Punishment is going to be really good here. And this is a good attack. I mean, flat 180 is not something we see very often. We see Ho-Oh does a flat 180, but that's for 4 energy, and it can't attack next turn. We see the Moltres from this set does a flat 180, but that's for 4 energy, and you've got to discard 3 of them. I mean, we looked at a Alolan Golem recently, and a Alolan Golem actually does 190. But that's for 5 energy, and you've got to discard 2 of them. Pokemon does not often let us do a flat 180 damage, and for that alone, this is exceptionally noteworthy. And it's not even that bad a requirement. I mean, the requirement here is that you've got no other EXs or GXs on the field. Well, Granbull's a good deck at the moment that doesn't play any GXs. White Kyurem is a good deck at the moment that doesn't play any of these. There's plenty of Malamar builds around that don't play any of these either. The biggest downside is that you can't play any GX setup Pokemon. And essentially here I'm looking at Tapu Lele and I'm looking at Alolan Ninetales, both of which are really good Pokemon for getting set up in the early game. Tapu Lele gets you a supporter card and Alolan Ninetales gets you a couple of item cards. And they're really good for getting you set up and getting your deck rolling in the early game. But you can't use them here. Now, to be fair, we have seen decks, that crazy Japanese deck we looked at the other day, played an Alolan Ninetales and actually played an Ace Roller to pick it up. And one thing that's cool here, if you can combine this with Shrine of Punishment, you're actually putting 1 damage counter on all the EXs and GXs between turns, so you can play something like Ace Roller to pick them up. And I want to say this again. 180 damage flat on a non-GX Pokemon is really good. Now, one of the awkward things about Aerodactyl is that it evolves some unidentified fossil, but this can actually be a blessing or a curse, because on the one hand, it's kind of awkward, you can't search it out with Nest Ball because it's not a Pokemon and all of that, but on the other hand, you can't start with it. So this doesn't add in an awkward starting Pokemon, and if you're in a game where you don't want to use Aerodactyl, don't use Aerodactyl. But this could work in some decks. I mean, I would say this would be good in Granbull. Granbull does 160 if you've got 0 cards in hand. Well, actually, this does 180, and remember, this is 180 to anything, not just to EXs and GXs, as long as you've got no EXs or GXs on the bench. So if there's a turn where you can't empty out your hand, you can use this. The problem is you really need to play a double colorless energy here and an unidentified fossil and an Aerodactyl. That is starting to creep in with inconsistency. And even in a deck which runs on Makago and Oranguru, that does seem just a little bit too much. But certainly in a Malamar deck, this could be a really good non-GX attacker. Now, the other thing we need to mention about Unidentified Fossil is that it cannot be got back with something like Rescue Stretcher. It is a Pokemon when it's on the field, but only when it is on the field. The fact that you're doing a flat 180 here is phenomenal. And the fact that it's a stage 1 for free energy is a lot easier than other things that we've seen. And the fact that it is for colorless energy means that it could go in with Kiawe, it could go in with Malamar, it could go in with Magnezone. You could put this into whatever deck you liked. But it's still not quite the most consistent thing ever. There are still going to be awkward things here. It still is a stage 1 at the end of the day. It is for free energy. And it is a good attacker that I do expect to see teched into some decks, but I don't think it is a phenomenal card because it evolves some unidentified fossil, and because it's for more than 1 energy attachment, and because it doesn't hit anything for weakness. So hey ho, ladies and gentlemen, There we go. I think we should give this free Wassies because it's exactly the kind of card that you should have sitting around in your binder just in case you ever want to have a play with it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the very definition of a free Wassie card. But whether you agree with me or disagree with me, I would heartily recommend that you head on over to the comment section to tell me what you think. Go nuts, but please do remember the rule. Be nice, would ya? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at The Wassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassiePlays for some more Wassie action. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.